Hi everyone, welcome to Glenn Tutorials once again. So we are doing the 9th standard science today, state board, the 4th chapter, measurement of matter. Now what is matter? Matter is nothing but any substance or any physical substance which we can touch, okay, which we can feel, that is matter. Now any substance which is matter has atoms in them, okay. So now we'll first study if there is matter, if there are atoms, how these things constitute together. Now, in the previous standard, we have learned that compounds are formed by chemical combination of elements. How are compound formed? By chemical combination. Anything that is formed, let it be wood, let it be tea, let it be a book, let it be a laptop, let it be anything. It is formed by chemical combination of elements. It is formed with definite proportions of chemical combinations. We have also learned that important principle of Dalton's atomic theory. What was Dalton's atomic theory? We had studied in the 8th standard. John Dalton, what he had put in 1803, that he celebrated this atomic theory. If you see the model that he has made of the atom, according to this theory, matter is made of atoms, and atoms are indivisible and indestructible. Indivisible and indestructible means they cannot be destroyed. They are inside matter. They are inside particular elements. They are inside particular type of compounds or anything that is there. Atom is there, ranging from the mobile in your hand to your hair on your head. Everything, there is atoms present in that, and that is indestructible. It cannot be destroyed. All atoms of an element are alike, while different elements have different atoms with different mass. Obviously, every type of an element is different in looks. It is different in particular mass. Let it be having, it is having a different weight. It is having a different color. So when it has all these things different, automatically atoms also will be different in that, because the mass and the look of it is also different. Let's continue. This is what Dalton had said. Now we also learn that important principle of Dalton's atomic theory, and molecules of a compound are formed by joining atoms of different elements to each other. So many different elements are joined together and many atoms are joined together. All these things are joined to form a particular element or an atom. Everything is joined to form one particular element or atom. Common sense. Next, law of chemical composition. The composition of a substance changes during a chemical change. The fundamental experiments in this regard were performed by scientists in 18th and 19th century. Composition of substance changes during a chemical change. Means anything that is made up is made with chemicals. It's a chemical change that is happening. So every chemical change that is happening has a particular composition to it. I'll give a basic example. Suppose we are making tea. If we add more sugar, if we add extra tea powder, less tea powder, or more water, or less milk, we'll not get tea. So definite composition is required to make the perfect tea, right? While doing this, they measured accurately the substances used and formed and discovered the laws of chemical composition. Scientists could then write the molecular formulae of various compounds on the basis of Dalton's atomic theory. So because of Dalton, after Dalton, Rutherford, then J.J. Thomson, then Niels Bohr, all these people came, all these scientists came after Dalton. So they improvised on what theory Dalton did. And the law of chemical composition. Here we shall verify the laws of chemical composition. Now, we don't need to do this experiment. Let's go ahead. Law of conservation of matter. Now, in whatever activities were done, conserving matter, this activity was done. So what is the meaning of law of conservation of matter? French scientist Antoine Lavoisier, what he did, he inferred from his research that there is no rise or drop in the mass of matter during a chemical reaction. Now, suppose we make sugar with water. Okay, make sugar with water. The weight of sugar and the weight of water, we take it separate and then we mix it and we see how much the weight. Both the weights will be same. Sugar and water separate and sugar water separate. That's the solution. So sugar and water together plus sugar plus water is equal to the final product. This is what is the law of conservation of matter. I repeat, sugar plus water together is equal to the final product of sugar water solution, right? So in a chemical reaction, the total mass of reactants is same as the total mass of the products formed. So this is the law of conservation of matter. Reactants means what we use to make a chemical reaction, and product is what we get after performing a chemical reaction. So this is called the law of conservation of matter. Now next we go to the law of constant proportion. J.L. Proust, he was a French scientist who invented the constant proportion law. Now what is the meaning of this constant proportion? The proportion by mass of a constituent element in the different samples of a compound is fixed. Same thing what I'm going on saying. Tea. I'm giving you a basic example of tea once again and again because we almost have tea every day. Constant proportion of everything is important. Constant proportion of sugar, constant proportion of milk, constant proportion of water, constant proportion of tea powder. ये सब मिलके ही will get tea. Anything is more or less, that is not tea. That is some nonsense that we make. It is not called tea. So, okay. So, and let it be not even tea, let it be any dish or any cooking we do. We have to put everything in constant proportion. Then only we'll get the perfect dish. Let it be making of any product. Let it be the mouse which is there in your hand. Let it be the laptop. Let it be a mobile. Let it be a book. Let it be headphone. Let it be tube light. Let it be anything. Everything has to be in constant proportion to make that particular product. Otherwise, it is not, the outcome is not obtained. The proportion by mass of hydrogen, oxygen, water is obtained from any source, that is 1:8. So if we want to mix hydrogen with water, that is H2O, it is combined in the proportion of 1:8. Sorry, I said hydrogen, water, hydrogen with oxygen. So hydrogen with oxygen 1:8, then only we get water, that is H2O. If little bit of more hydrogen or less oxygen is there, that is not called water. Okay. This means that 9 gram of water is formed by chemical composition of 1 gram of hydrogen, 8 gram of oxygen. So 1 of hydrogen, 8 of oxygen is mixed together, then only we'll get water. Similarly, proportion by mass of carbon and oxygen, carbon dioxide obtained from any source is 3:8. So this means carbon and oxygen means CO2, that is carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide also in definite proportion has to be fixed, then only we will get carbon dioxide. If it is not mixed in definite, that is carbon and oxygen is not mixed in the proportion of 3:8, then we won't get carbon dioxide. So 44 grams of carbon dioxide, 12 grams of carbon and 32 grams of oxygen is what we get to make carbon oxygen together. This is how Proust and Lavoisier used to look. Okay. We'll go to the next part. Now, what is an atom? Atom, the size, the mass, and the valency of an atom. So the smallest particle of an element is called an atom. Okay. We know that always. We have been studying it every time. So we have learned that center of an atom is the nucleus and that they are moving electrons in the extranuclear part. In the 8th standard, we learned about the atomic structure. There are many electrons moving around. There are protons, positive charge, electrons, negative, neutrons having neutral charge. And in between is the nucleus. The electrons are negatively charged elementary particles, with the elementary particles that make up the nucleus are positively charged protons, and electrically neutral neutrons. Okay, neutral is neutrons, protons is positive, electrons is negative. Size of an atom is determined by its radius. The atomic radius of an isosceles of an isolated atom is the distance between the nucleus of an atom and the outermost orbit. So suppose this is your, if I draw it, okay, suppose I'm drawing a circle here, right, and I am making the nucleus in between. Okay, so this is your nucleus. So from nucleus up to the outermost orbit, this is your radius. Okay, that is the radius of an atom. For any circle also, this is the thing, how we check radius, center to the circumference, that is the radius. Size of an atom is determined by radius. Now if you see, let's go ahead. Approximate size of an atom and molecule, it's around 10⁻⁻10, that is hydrogen atom. This is the size. A water molecule is 10⁻⁹, very minute. And hemoglobin molecule, which is mostly in our blood, is around 10⁻8. Okay, now mass of an atom. The mass of an atom is concentrated in its nucleus. Mass means the actual weight of an atom is nothing but the weight of the nucleus, mostly weight of the nucleus. And it is due to protons, neutrons in it. The total number of protons and neutrons in the atomic nucleus is called the atomic mass number. So protons and neutrons are together called the nucleons. Remember this, it can come to fill in the blanks. Now we'll see a small video in which we'll come to know in detail how the atomic mass number is found out of any atom. Okay, just watch this video, everyone.
Measured. Now let's understand atomic mass in detail. Before that, can you tell me what exactly the concept of atomic number is? Can you define it once for me? Yes, it's simply the number of protons present inside the nucleus of an atom. Now on similar lines, can you tell me what atomic mass could be? Yes, it simply means the mass of an atom. But how does it get determined? Imagine we have a bag which is made up of extremely thin material. So thin that it almost does not have any mass of its own. Now we fill this bag with some stuff inside. If this bag is placed on a weighing scale, then can we say that the total mass of the bag will be the sum of the mass of all the objects inside it? Absolutely. Similarly, the mass of an atom can be calculated with the help of the subatomic particles in it. But we know that among all the subatomic particles, electrons have negligible mass. That is, they are considered to be almost weightless. So what are we left with? Yes, we have both protons and neutrons in the nucleus. And these two do have some amount of mass is what we know. Now tell me one thing, which among these two particles should be considered? Shall we consider only the mass of protons or only the neutrons? Or both together? Well, since both have a significant amount of mass, we will consider the mass of both together. Hence, the atomic mass is defined as the total number of protons and neutrons present inside the nucleus of the atom. It is also referred to as the mass number. Let us take a simple example. In case of a simple element like fluorine, we find that there are 9 protons and 10 neutrons in the nucleus. Wait a second. We have always come across cases where the atomic nucleus has an equal number of protons and neutrons. So how is it that the number of neutrons is more? Well, tell me, does the presence of additional neutrons really bother the atom? Does the charge of the atom increase or decrease? Absolutely not. That's because they're neutral. Then why should an extra neutron bother us? So coming back to the atomic mass of fluorine, we have 9 protons and 10 neutrons. That means the total would give us 19. So can we say that the atomic mass of fluorine is 19 units? That's right. Just like fluorine, even aluminium has an extra neutron compared to the number of protons. That is, in a single atom of aluminium, we have 13 protons and 14 neutrons. Summing up the two, we get 27 units, which is the atomic mass of aluminium. Now let's take another random example of chlorine. A chlorine atom has 17 protons and 18 neutrons. That means the atomic mass of chlorine will be 35 units, right? Absolutely. But wait a second. A few chlorine atoms that exist in nature exhibit a different form. Some of them have 17 protons and 20 neutrons. That gives us the atomic mass of chlorine as 37 units. So which one is the correct atomic mass? In case of chlorine, both the atomic masses are right. The atoms having 17 protons and 18 neutrons have an atomic mass as 35 units. On the other hand, chlorine atoms with 17 protons and 20 neutrons have an atomic mass of 37 units.
Yeah, so I hope you all understood this part. Now we'll go to the next, that is chemical symbols of elements. Now, every element, it has to have a symbol. We can't keep saying the whole name again and again. Carbon dioxide, mercury, lead, antimony. So we have symbols for chemical elements. Okay, so this part is about that. Now here the symbols are not given to you, but the symbols will be given to you later. You have to learn it. You can go online also and search for every. Now suppose if you say water, it has a symbol. Okay, now we say it as H2O. Now for similarly gold, it has aurum. Okay, so AU we call it. Now silver, it is argentum, so we call it AG. Mercury, it is hydrargyrum, so we call it Hg. So these are lead, plumbum, sodium, natrium. Okay, so these are Italian this Latin names, but we say it in a symbol. Suppose sodium is natrium, we say Na. So whatever chemical formula we do, we don't write sodium plus this hydroxide gives us sodium hydroxide. We don't write this in full form. We write it in symbol. Na plus hydroxide H2 gives us whatever. Okay. Now next, molecules of elements and compounds. Atoms of some elements, like helium, neon, have independent existence. When they exist independently, they don't need to react with others. That's why they are called independent existence. It means these elements are in monoatomic molecular state. Sometimes 2 or more atoms of an element combine to form molecules of that element. Such elements are in a polyatomic molecular state. For example, elements of oxygen, nitrogen are diatomic. two atoms or diatomic, O2. When atoms of different elements combine with each other, the molecules of compounds are formed. In other words, compounds are formed by chemical attraction between different elements. So elements react together, there is a chemical reaction, and attraction happens. That's the reason there is a reaction. Next, molecular mass. Molecular mass of a substance is the sum of atomic masses of all the atoms in a single molecule of that substance. So molecular mass, sum of atomic masses. So all atomic masses together make up the molecular mass. Okay, we'll see it is also expressed in the form of Dalton. Obviously, we have to measure liquid, we have liter. To measure weight, we have kg. So to measure atomic, to measure molecular mass, we have Dalton, and the unit is, it is written as small u. Now we'll see a small video of how mole and molecular mass, how is it significant in measuring the mass of certain atoms and molecules. We'll just see this video now.
When we go to a supermarket, we always buy things using standard values. In other words, we always take 1 kilogram of rice or 200 milliliters of fruit juice. Fruits are sometimes counted using the unit dozen. 1 dozen means 12 of something. These are terms used in everyday life. But what if I want to measure something in terms of the number of tiny particles present in it? Let me explain this in detail. Looking at this pure gold, can you tell me how many gold atoms are present in this? Or wait, looking at this glass of water, can you tell me how many water molecules are present in it? You will probably say that it's practically impossible to calculate the number of atoms or molecules in these examples. But astonishingly, chemistry has an answer to this as well. That brings us to the concept of mole. What does it mean? It's very easy. 1 mole of anything has 6.022 times 10 raised to 23 atoms or molecules or particles present inside it. Isn't this number huge? If I have to write down the zeros, this is how big the number will look. 1 mole of anything has these many particles. Now let's say we take a substance which has 3 times the number of particles here. Then we say that this is 3 moles of this substance. And what if we have a substance which has 8 times the number of particles here? That's correct. It will be 8 moles of that substance. That's the basic concept of a mole of any substance. Let's see if you've understood the concept well. Now here's 1 mole of this pure gold. How many atoms does it have? Yes, as it's 1 mole, it will have 6.02 times 10 raised to 23 atoms in it. Similarly, 1 mole of pure water will have 6.022 times 10 raised to 23 water molecules inside it. So is this how we define 1 mole? 6.022 times 10 raised to 23 atoms or molecules or particles? Well, that's the simplest way to understand it. That means if we take, for example, a bag containing 6.022 times 10 raised to 23 hydrogen atoms, then can we say it's 1 mole of hydrogen? Yes, that's right. Similarly, 6.022 times 10 raised to 23 molecules of any compound like copper sulfate is 1 mole of copper sulfate. Simple, isn't it? Wait, we have just understood the concept of mole in simple words. But we are yet to take a look at the scientific definition of 1 mole. And what's this number we referred to? Does it have a special name? Watch our next video to know more. In the previous part of the video, we saw that 1 mole of something is nothing but 6.022 times 10 raised to 23 particles. It could be atoms or molecules or anything. If I give you 1 mole of pure gold, then what will the number of atoms in it be equal to? Yes, these many atoms. And 1 mole of pure water will have these many molecules. But what is the scientific definition of a mole? Scientifically, 1 mole is defined as the amount of substance that contains the same number of atoms, molecules or particles as there are atoms in 12 grams of carbon-12. Yes, even I didn't understand it when we read it for the first time. Let me break it down for you. Let me remove this definition from the screen. What we have on the screen now is 12 grams of carbon-12. Carbon-12 is one of the isotopes of carbon. Now 12 grams of carbon-12 is what was taken as a standard. What's so special about this? Can you guess the number of atoms here? Yes, it's 6.022 times 10 raised to 23 atoms. Now that you've understood this, let me repeat the definition for you. 1 mole is defined as the amount of substance that contains the same number of atoms, molecules or particles as there are atoms in 12 grams of carbon-12. Did you understand the definition now? It consists of two simple parts actually. It tells us that this part is equal to this part. The number of particles in 1 mole of a substance is equal to the number of atoms in 12 grams of carbon-12. That's it. That's all the definition tells us. Many people get confused when it comes to the concept of mole. Let's take many more examples to be absolutely sure. How about taking the same example of pure gold and pure water? When we say 1 mole of pure gold, then according to our definition, it will have the same number of atoms as the number of atoms in 12 grams of carbon-12. That means 1 mole of gold will have 6.022 times 10 raised to 23 atoms of gold. Similarly, water will also have the same number of molecules as the number of atoms in 12 grams of carbon-12. That means it will have 6.022 times 10 raised to 23 molecules of water. Remember, the definition uses carbon-12 as a standard. It is used to compare the number of atoms or molecules or particles present in the substance. But what's the mystery behind this number? A scientist named Lorenzo Romano Amedeo Carlo Avogadro came up with this concept. I know the name is long, so we will address him as Avogadro. So the number 6.022 times 10 raised to 23 is called as the Avogadro's number. It is just a number used to represent quantities. It's similar to how we use the word pair for 2 or the word dozen to represent 12. Similarly, Avogadro's number is the term used to represent 6.022 times 10 raised to 23 number of any entity. So can we go to a shop and say, I want Avogadro's number of chocolates? Of course we can. The only problem is that the shop won't really have those many chocolates and neither will we be able to carry them back home. So getting back to the concept, Avogadro's number is just another number used to represent quantities. But the number is so huge that using this in daily life is not practically possible and advisable. Then why does the number exist if we do not use it? Yes, the number is not commonly used in daily life by us. However, it comes to the rescue of chemists that work with atoms, molecules, electrons, and many such small entities. That is the reason why it's used to calculate 1 mole of any substance. Let's talk about one last concept. We know that 1 mole of carbon-12 is 12 grams of carbon-12. That's because 12 grams of carbon-12 has the Avogadro's number of atoms. Now let me ask you a question. If you answer this correctly, it means you've understood the concept of mole. What will be the mass of 1 mole of pure gold? Will it be 12 grams? The answer is no. It will not be 12 grams. Note that in both cases, the number of atoms is the same, but the mass of an atom of gold is different from the mass of an atom of carbon-12. Hence, the mass of 1 mole of gold will definitely be different from the mass of 1 mole of carbon-12. So 1 mole of gold weighs around 196.97 grams. That is because mass of gold atom is different from the mass of carbon-12 atoms. Similarly, 1 mole of water will have the Avogadro's number of molecules, but it will not weigh 12 grams. So if we take 1 mole of water and find its mass, we get the answer as 18.015 grams of water. And I'm sure you know why. For the sake of comparison, if we take 1 mole of gold, 1 mole of silver and 1 mole of copper, then all of them will have the same number of atoms in them. That is 6.022 times 10 raised to 23 atoms. This number is the Avogadro's number. However, the mass of each one will be different. That's because the mass of individual atoms that make up these elements is different.
Okay, so I hope you understood the concept of mole. If you see here, atomic masses are given of certain elements. Same way, their molecular formula is given. Now, molecular formula NaCl is sodium chloride. Okay, MgCl2 is magnesium chloride. So these are all the molecular formula. So if you say NaCl, sodium chloride, the entire thing sodium chloride is not written. It's written in your symbol form. Let's go ahead. When elements and compounds take part in chemical reactions, it is their atoms and molecules that react with each other. So if two elements or compounds are in a chemical reaction, their atoms and molecules react. Nothing else reacts with each other. Therefore, it is necessary to know the numbers of the atoms and molecules. Therefore, while numbers means why? Now, if you see here before also what we did, NaCl means Na1 and Cl1. One atom of Na and one atom of Cl will come together. Then only sodium chloride is formed. And sodium chloride is nothing but salt. Okay. So one atom. If little bit 2 or 3 or 4, that then we don't get salt. So in exact proportion, it has to be there. However, while carrying out chemical reaction, it is convenient to measure out quantities that can be handled instead of counting the numbers. This is the concept of mole, the video which you have just seen. I hope you have understood Avogadro number also, which was there in the video. Let's go to next, that is valency. Now, in basic language, if I tell you, every element has a target in which it has to react. It can't be more than that. Suppose you mix salt with water. Okay, you mix, you'll get salt water. Suppose you keep mixing more, you will not get hyper salt water, or it will not mix more than 100 or 200%. There is a target in which salt mixes with water. It won't mix more than that. So that is called the ability of an element to combine. That is the maximum ability. That is called as valency. The capacity of an element to combine, it's called valency. Valency of an element is indicated by a specific number. So every element has a target number in which it reacts. That is called as valency. We'll just see a video on it, which will give us perfect explanation about how valency of particular elements is determined and what is electronic configuration. Electronic configuration of different elements is different. But what does it mean? Just watch this video in detail.
To understand a few concepts related to atoms, let's begin with two simple elements, hydrogen and helium. Apart from the difference in the number of electrons and their structure, can you tell me another difference between these two? Yes, the most important difference lies in the fact that hydrogen is capable of reacting with several other elements, while helium never really does. Helium is a quiet, unreactive element that does not participate in reactions. But have you ever wondered why? What makes helium and many other elements also like neon, argon not participate in chemical reactions? And another question we would have is what makes other elements react spontaneously with each other? The answer is valency. Yes, one of the most important factors for reaction is the concept of valency. But before that, let's have a look at an important concept called the electronic configuration. Now, what could this be? As the name suggests, electronic refers to electrons, and the term configuration literally means arrangement or layout. That means the electronic configuration of an atom is the arrangement of its electrons in the shells. As simple as that. There are two facts that we need to recall. First, the innermost shell, or the first shell rather, has a maximum of 2 electrons that can be accommodated in it. Secondly, from the second shell onwards, whichever is the outermost shell, it can accommodate a maximum of 8 electrons. In simpler words, outermost orbital can contain 8 electrons at max. This state is called as the octet state. The term originates from the Greek word octa, which means 8. The octet state is considered to be a stable state. Let's understand this in a simple way. You love chocolates. Now, if there is a bag of chocolates kept open before you, how many will you try to grab at once? Needless to say, you will try and take as many chocolates as your hand can accommodate. That means the maximum number of chocolates is what anybody will wish for. Now, what have chocolates got to do with electronic configuration and valency? Let's understand the relation. As a part of human tendency, we will try and grab the maximum number of chocolates using our hands. Similarly, the atoms would want to have maximum number of electrons their shells can accommodate. That means if it's just one shell like in the case of hydrogen or helium, then the atoms would want to have 2 electrons in it. That will be the outermost shell of the atom. This will help them achieve a stable state. Similarly, for all the other atoms having more than one shell, it's obvious that they will wish to have 8 electrons in their outermost shell. And why is this so? That's correct. It's because the outermost orbital of any atom can accommodate a maximum of 8 electrons in it. That is the reason why all the atoms of various elements are in a constant struggle of attaining 8 electrons in their last shell. That is, achieving the octet state. However, it's not possible for all to have 8 electrons in the outermost shell. Imagine the case of oxygen. It has a total of 8 electrons. So can we just have one orbital around the nucleus containing all the 8 electrons? Absolutely not. In fact, according to the rule, we have to fill 2 electrons in the first and the remaining 6 electrons in the second shell, because the capacity of the first shell is to accommodate a maximum of 2 electrons. So can we say that the electronic configuration of oxygen is 2, 6? That's right. But now this indicates that oxygen does not have 8 electrons in the outermost shell. So how will it achieve its stable state? What can be done to have 8 electrons in the outermost orbital? Yes, oxygen can borrow or share electrons with atoms of other elements, right? Absolutely. This is how chemical reactions happen. Wait a second. Are we saying that chemical reactions occur because atoms of various elements give or take or share electrons between them? That's correct. And is this how compounds are formed? Absolutely. The giving or accepting or even sharing of electrons between the atoms of elements give rise to formation of chemical bonds. This ultimately gives us a compound. Now you tell me, how will the atoms decide how many electrons are to be given or accepted? How will they understand that electrons need to be shared with the other partner? Who decides all this? Well, the answer to all these questions is the concept of valency.
For the next part, I hope you all understood valency and mole and all. Now the next part we'll see what are radicals. Okay, radicals are nothing but cations and anions. Now what is cations and anions? Compounds with ionic bonds have 2 constituents. These are cations and anions. Cations are nothing but positively charged ions and anions are nothing but negatively charged ions. Okay, so every reaction or every molecular formula has a positive ion or a negative ion. So positive ions are called as cations, negative ions are called as anions. Now what is the meaning of this? They take part independently in chemical reactions and are therefore called as radicals. So these cations and anions react together. That's why they are called as radicals. It is seen from the charts that different bases such that NaOH, KOH, NaOH sodium hydroxide, KOH is potassium hydroxide. They are formed in definite proportion. Now you must be thinking definite proportion already hai. Sodium hydroxide hai, so NaOH, 1 atom of Na, 1 atom of OH. Yes, very true. But positivity and negativity also is important. It has to see, we have to see how much charge a particular ion has, if it is positive or negative charge. If Na has positive, OH has negative, all this is also important to get the definite proportion. Hence, the cationic radicals are also called basic radicals. Different bases are distinguished from each other by the basic radicals in them. On the other hand, different acids, now hydrochloric acid, hydrobromic acid, these are all formed when different anionic radicals are paired with cationic radicals. Now H plus positive radical, okay, that is cation. Therefore, the anionic radicals are called acidic radicals. The difference in the composition of various acids becomes clear from the acidic radicals present in them. Now, if you see, there are examples given to you. There are acidic and basic radicals, Ag plus. Now, if you see, anionic radicals are acidic. So, if it is negative, it is anionic radicals, and it is cationic, then it is basic. Okay, anionic, acidic, cationic, basic radicals. Basic radicals are from a removal of electrons from the atoms of metals, that is Na plus and Cu2 plus. Removal of electrons. Some electrons have to be removed from a particular molecular formula. Suppose there is Na plus, here there is Cu2 plus. So 2 plus matlab 2 positive charges. So उसमें से एक positive निकालना है to react with something else. वो react कैसे होगा? to put a negative charge. Suppose Cu2 plus के साथ हम लोग ने Cl minus डाल दिया, तो वो पॉजिटिव और नेगेटिव हो जाएगा नेगेटिव. ओके, सो 2 पॉजिटिव में से बचेगा सिर्फ एक पॉजिटिव और दूसरा हो जाएगा नेगेटिव. सो दिस इज द वे वी रिएक्ट एलिमेंट्स. There are some exceptions. NH4 acidic. Now NH4 is a different type of an element. Okay. Similarly, acidic radicals are formed by adding electrons to the atoms of non-metals such as Cl minus, H2 minus. But there are some exceptions such as MnO4 minus. Okay, so see, in acidic radicals and basic radicals also, everything react in definite proportions. But there'll be exceptions. Sometimes with adding positive and negative, वो reaction का result नहीं मिलता है. So these are called as exceptions. So we have to do some extra radicals to be added to them to get the definite product. Monoatomic radicals. Now there are some radicals which are called as mono. Monoatomic means one atom. Na plus, Cu plus, Cl minus. Okay. So one ही है. Positive होने दो या negative, but only one. They are called simple radicals. While when a radical is a group of atoms carrying charge such as Cu, SO4, 2 minus, NH4 plus. अभी यहाँ पे 4 है और plus है. फिर नीचे भी 4 है और 2 minus है. They are called as composite radicals. Okay. So they are नॉट मोनो, क्योंकि मोनो मतलब वन, इधर Na एक ही एटम है और एक पॉजिटिव चार्ज है तो सिंपल रेडिकल. Cu एक ही एटम है, एक पॉजिटिव चार्ज है, सिंपल. Cl एक ही एटम है, एक नेगेटिव चार्ज है, सिंपल रेडिकल. So this, suppose there is 4 and 2 minus, they are called composite radical. Magnitude of charge of any radical is its valency. Same thing, there is a target of which how much it can react, that is called as valency. Okay, we'll go to the next part, chemical formulae of compounds. Now this paragraph is nothing but every compound has a chemical formula. Simple, we just saw above. Sodium hydroxide होगा तो NaOH, ठीक है, वो chemical formula है. Na और OH together उसको बोलते हैं sodium hydroxide. So whenever we react in reactions करने के time, we use NaOH. We don't write the entire sodium hydroxide. तो दो symbol हम लोग साथ में लिखते हैं. Na का symbol जो sodium का है and OH that is hydroxide. We write it together to get sodium hydroxide. Hydroxide, it's sodium sulfate because it's SO4. O4 means sulfate because oxygen is there. Hydroxide, there is OH. Sulfates, there is only O. So to write the symbols, how we write? We take Na and SO4 together. Na2 and SO4 1, they get cross multiplied. SO4 का 2 मतलब maximum जितना SO4 mix हो सकता है, and Na1, that is the maximum how much atoms of Na can be mixed. That is Na1 atom can be mixed, SO4 2 atoms. So we cross multiply and we get Na2SO4. That is what we get. That is called as sodium sulfate. Okay. So ions and radicals. Some examples are given to you of hydrogen basic radical. There are some acidic radicals. Now H plus होगा तो hydrogen है. Hydride is H minus. That is called an acidic radical. MnO4 permagnet. Potassium permagnet is there. Potassium K plus. Iron is called as ferrum. And in molecular formula, ferric, and here if it is 3 plus then ferric, F minus is fluoride. So same way all these details are given to you. It is better if you all memorize this, it will be good. Okay, so I hope you all understood this chapter. If any doubts are there, you all can we'll discuss in our lecture, or you all can message me in the comment box. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye.